أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم. Welcome to iTVusa's Ramadan series, Raising Our Children Right. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone, and I'm happy to be with you on this journey as we take a look at the different stages of tarbiyah and better understand what we can do as parents to raise righteous children, inshallah, and to do our best to bring out the best in our children. So we've been talking about the first stage of tarbiyah from age 0 to 7. And we've talked a lot about the connection that children tend to cement in this early stage, the understanding and the recognition of the important role of the parent in this stage, and the way that the child looks to the parent as the first role model, the first teacher, the first person that they are connecting with, that they can feel that sense of safety and security with. Now, in our last episode, we talked a little bit about listening, learning how to listen, to understand, not to listen, to respond. Now, what goes hand in hand with that nonverbal and verbal cues that comes with listening to our children is indicating or showing empathy and giving the child validation. What does it mean to show empathy and give our children validation? Now, it's so important to remember that our children will grapple with big emotions, and those big emotions sometimes will not have an outlet if they don't have the words or they don't have the ability to piece together how to convey that emotion. So the child who is frustrated, who is tired, who feels intensely that, they want a specific toy, many times we will see an emotional meltdown. We will hear, screams, shouts, maybe tears, tantruming. And this is not because the child is purposely wanting to misbehave, but this is a reaction to big emotions that the child is struggling to get a hold of, that is struggling to understand, that the child is struggling to convey. And because they are unable to convey, maybe in words, what it is that they're feeling, they will instead allow the emotions to take over them. And what we see is what's viewed almost as a lack of emotional control. But it's not a lack of emotional control. It's a plea or a bid for empathy. It's a plea or a bid for understanding in that moment. And that's what we want to give our children. So often at this age, we might see a child crying, our own children crying, and our response might be, what are you crying about? It's not a big deal. Stop crying, right? We may see a child very upset about, the color of a toy or, a certain type of food that we've put in front of them to eat. And our response may be, say alhamdulillah. You should be grateful that you have food on the table. Think about the children who don't have food on the table. And we might respond in a way where there's a great deal of negativity or harshness in our response. So in order to provide our children with empathy and validation, we first need to understand. So asking questions is important. So the child who is upset maybe when there's a certain food that's placed in front of them, and the child maybe is crying, and you may be baffled as a parent. You may say, okay, but I just made this same dish for you last week and you loved it. Why are you crying and upset now about this same dish? Asking the questions rather than responding immediately with, I can't believe you. Why don't you just eat the food in front of you? You're so ungrateful. And a lot of times we begin to respond with this negative type of an approach where we are criticizing the child. We are really denigrating the child and doing a number on their self-esteem. To provide empathy, we instead want to ask questions and understand. What is it about the food that you don't like? I see that you're upset now, and that's the validation, right? Identify the emotion that the child is feeling. I see that you're upset now. I see that you're bothered now. I see that you're frustrated now. I see that you're annoyed now. Give the child tools to be able to name the emotions that they're feeling, and then provide empathy. Don't dismiss it, right? I recognize and understand that in this moment you are upset because maybe you're not hungry. Maybe you feel like you don't want to sit at the dinner table. Maybe you're tired. Let's try to figure out together what you're feeling. It's okay if it takes a little time, from sitting down at the dinner table and eating. It's okay if it takes a little time out of the enjoyable gathering that you're out. Take your child aside, sit with them, validate their feelings, recognize the emotion is real and what they're feeling is probably very intense in that moment. Empathize with the child. Let them know that you realize this is hard for them. Even though it may not be hard for you, you may be like, why is this child crying about the plate of food they have in front of them? But it's hard for them. And we see this in the example of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who spoke to the brother of Anas radiallahu anhu, his younger brother, when his bird had died. And when the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, instead of dismissing the tears of the child and saying, it's just a bird, why are you sad? It's not a big deal, don't cry. Right? The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam empathized with the child, made a little rhyme about the passing of the bird, and showed the child that he recognized and understood the importance of his emotions at that time. And this is what we want to capture as parents, to empathize and to validate as we try to raise righteous children in a way that's most pleasing to Allah. I hope you'll join me in tomorrow's episode as we continue to talk about how we can raise our children right. جزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم.